I think from my perspective, another area that we're starting to see sort of regulations coming down the pipeline that are going to really affect a lot of things is in the sort of passive house side of things and energy, eco, but also climate change related things. And I think once again, we're lucky in this community in New England for people to be very aware of this.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
And how has that affected design, you know, and architecture, you know, for your firm?
Well, I mean, of course, especially once we start talking about it and bring it up with our clients, it usually becomes, you know, a very dynamic and active conversation. And, you know, it's interesting though, again, it's a very unique thing in terms of the things that really end up mattering to people. For example, you know, on sort of the flip side of keeping a home cooled and the importance of you know, embedding technologies that are going to make for a really comfortable, cool home when the temperatures get, you know, increased. We've been working with a homeowner, and from the very beginning, she has talked about, she's like, well, I always feel cold.
Right.
And so I want everything about the design of this house, everything we incorporate about warmth. And what we discovered in conversation was she wasn't just talking about physical warmth, she was talking about essentially really emotional warmth in the sense of, again, how does the space make her feel?
Right.
But, you know, so it's taking both of those things into consideration. And again, our design work has to bring in both of those things. So, you know, we're looking very carefully at, okay, we're going to, you know, put in a beautiful new, you know, three-sided, tall gas fireplace. And, you know, it's going to be glass on all three sides, so it becomes sort of this warm, both visually and physically, hub to all of the other rooms. And it's also sort of, you know, a comfortable collection point for seating. But again, because it sort of is like the hub of a wheel in terms of the layout of the room, you can see it from all different perspectives, you know, within that first floor space plan. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, these are all, you know, such important considerations.
Yeah. And do you see that the transition to sort of all electric is going to affect, I mean, that's a great example, for instance, you know, the gas fireplace, which is such the heart of the home, and it has been traditionally, historically, you know, sort of moved from wood and wood burners to sort of gas, of course, is very popular, but with the fossil fuel regulations, that tends to be going away. I mean, you know, how do clients react to those conversations, or is it even part of the conversation now?
No, it definitely is part of the conversation. I mean, we certainly try to be as much as the expert in all these different areas as we can. Of course, things can evolve very quickly. Code regulations can change quickly or seemingly quickly. So, you know, we just try to inform them as much as we can so that we can collectively help them with the decision making. And sometimes, you know, somebody says, you know, I know this is the wave of the future, or I know this is coming, or I know that, you know, maybe we should be considering this sort of direction. But, you know, we really want the gas fireplace if we can have it.
Of course.
You know, on the other hand, we're seeing a lot more people, for example, wanting, if they're doing an electrical upgrade to their service in their home, for example, that they want to make sure they're incorporating the charging port for an electric vehicle. And again, some people are aware that that technology is still really evolving and changing so fast that, you know, often what we're doing is saying, okay, let's have the electrician set it up for you, essentially put the wiring in place, but not necessarily have any particular housing or portal, or for lack of a better word, for it, you know, because that could change, but as long as the power is there, you know, we can put in whatever best system will make sense when you get your vehicle.
I think that's very good. I mean, and there's this concept of smart readying or future readying versus sort of future proof, right? And we use this term a lot internally, where future proof sort of implies putting all the solutions in that will last forever. But the reality is, and we've talked about this in a couple of different ways, that if you future proof, you actually end up almost unfuturing yourself, because you decide too many things,
Exactly.
right? And so future
Exactly.
readying is more focused on the infrastructure and the wiring.
Right.
You don't have to open up the walls, but you can
Right.
always switch out this thing for another thing without having to make architectural changes.
I think that's such a great point and such a great thing for people to know, because we have encountered situations where we have spoken to our clients about potential technologies to put into their homes, and somewhat often we get an answer to the effect of, well, we don't want to sort of create a situation where we're kind of married to this one type of technology if it's then going to become obsolete
Right.
in just a handful of years. And so they are worried about that lack of flexibility, if
Right.
you will.
Of course.
So I think to think about and talk about the future readiness is great. And there has to be sort of a balancing point there. But I think a lot of people are a little bit gun shy sometimes of doing implementing too much if they feel like, oh, the technology is going to change overnight, and then am I going to be able to get this fixed, for example,
Right.
or those sort of considerations.
Yeah, yeah. And the invisible speakers that we talked about earlier is a similar conversation. And it's great when we have a client who asks, well, we're building the speaker in, isn't that going to go bad? And it's a really smart question, actually. When you get that from a client, you know that you have somebody that's maybe experienced it and is asking the right questions. But for us, it's like making that decision. It's like the speaker itself is pretty dumb. It doesn't have any chips, right?
Right.
And so it's not going to sort of go obsolete,
Fail, right? Yeah.
And then what it's connected to, which might be in a rack or on a shelf that you can switch out later, that's the thing that's going to obsolete, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's Sonos now, or maybe it's whatever, will be the next sort of, device that you plug into it. But you can switch that out without making any changes, right? And I think that sort of thoughtfulness in the process and selection of solutions and all that stuff, I mean, that's, I think, what we're both about. But it is something where clients have to understand, like, that's a different kind of provider, right? You're not going to just sort of go and Google and then find somebody that does install speakers who's going to actually work in the way that we're talking about, very collaboratively.
Exactly. And that's why it's such a huge benefit to us to have partners like you guys, because we can. I certainly don't know everything, and so, but we know that we have trusted partners. We can get those answers to those questions, and when there are challenging questions being put our way, where we really do want to get that good information for our clients, then we can go to you and say, okay, here's the situation, help us out, and then it's such a benefit to the client, and they always, of course, appreciate the knowledge that they can then get, and have a full picture and a full understanding of, like, okay, this is what we're implementing, this is why you shouldn't be so fearful about it becoming obsolete, or issues of failure down the road. Right.
No, that's great. I mean, I think the more conversations we can have with our clients, sort of guiding them and educating them, is the better. I think everybody ends up with a better project.
Absolutely.